When St. John Bosco was a boy, he used to put on roadside magic shows, which attracted scores of people. In exchange, he either asked them to pray a rosary with him or listen to the Sunday sermon, which he had memorized word for word. These sleight-of-hand tricks were learned only to attract souls to Christ and do apostolate. Later on, when he was in high school, some people couldn't understand how he was able to pull off these impossible stunts and were convinced that he was possessed by a demon. Let's hear how St. John Bosco proved them wrong. The Miracles and Prophecies of St. John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. When John Bosco was 19 years old, he continued to be the life of the party wherever he set foot. Everyone was charmed by his good manners and his frank and joyous cordiality. John's conjuring tricks were so interesting that the spectators forgot everything else and hung on his every word or gesture. It was because of these stunts that he was a welcome guest in the households of Chieri. One of the tricks that he frequently performed was the fake killing of a sparrow, after which he would pound it in a mortar, place its remains in the barrel of a pistol, and pull the trigger. Lo and behold, the sparrow would fly out safe and sound. Or, at choice, he would pour either white or red wine from the same bottle. One day, he wagered that he could make an entire dish of ravioli disappear from the kitchen and make it reappear in somebody else's home. Some secretly made an identifying mark on the dish. Others, gripped by curiosity, attentively watched him as he made signs, muttered some mumbo-jumbo, and asked lengthy questions. Finally, John announced that it was done, and invited everyone to go to a certain house to see for themselves. They all rushed there and found an identical dish of ravioli, just as he had said. This was all prearranged, no doubt, but when he would deftly remove a ball from the tip of someone's nose, guess the amount of money people had in their pockets, pulverize metal coins with his fingertips, or make his entire audience look deformed or even headless, some people began to think that John was truly a sorcerer, for it didn't seem possible that anyone could perform such acts without the assistance of a demon. His landlord, Thomas Cumino, more and more began to suspect this. He was a very religious man, but he also was fond of practical jokes and good clean fun. John took advantage of his easygoing nature to play all manner of tricks on him. Quite often he would fill a bottle with wine, but when he poured it into his glass, it was just plain water, or vice versa. Frequently, fruitcake would suddenly turn into bread. Coins in Cumino's purse were transformed into useless, rusty scraps of tin. His hat would become a nightcap. Walnuts and hazelnuts were changed into gravel. Sometimes John would make Cumino's eyeglasses vanish before his very eyes and suddenly reappear inside of one of Cumino's pockets, although the poor man had been rummaging through them over and over again, even turning them inside out. Or, at a mere gesture on John's part, an object that the old gentleman kept carefully hidden, such as his wallet, would suddenly show up before him, while another that stood before his eyes would simultaneously disappear without a trace. Often John would show him some playing cards and ask him to select one. He would then guess which card had been picked. Or John would tell him to think of a number, add it, multiply it, and subtract it. At the end of these operations, he would tell his landlord the original number he had picked. All this would stun the old gentleman. Sometimes John would wager that he could conjure up a key, which Cumino for certain knew was elsewhere. The key would then turn up at the bottom of the soup tureen after the soup had been served. Such pranks occurred practically every day. All the good man could say in the face of them was, "Men can't do these things, and God doesn't waste time with such nonsense, so it must be the devil's doing." He had nearly made up his mind to ask John to leave. Unwilling to discuss the matter with any of his lodgers, Cumino sought the advice of Father Bertinetti, a priest who lived nearby. He called on him one fine day, almost terrified out of his wits. "I've come to see you about a very serious matter of conscience, Father," he said. "I believe I have a sorcerer in my house." He told the priest about his suspicions, a long tale of things he had seen, or imagined to see, or suspected, and he portrayed them so vividly that Father Bertinetti began to believe them himself. The priest thought that such pastimes might indeed be wizardry. He decided to refer the matter to Canon Burzio, the school superintendent. Father Burzio, in due time, sent for the boy for questioning. Father Burzio was a pious, learned, and prudent man. When John showed up at his house, the canon had just given alms to a beggar and had started saying his breviary. Smiling, he asked the boy to wait a little and then invited him to come into his study. Here he began to question him about the Catholic faith. John answered brilliantly, but he could hardly keep from laughing once he realized the purpose of this interrogation, to see if he was possessed. The priest then asked him how he spent his time during the day and was very satisfied with his answers. John answered frankly, intelligently, and without any evasion, but his examiner was not yet convinced. He continued the interrogation courteously, but with an expression of severity on his face. "I am quite satisfied with your application to your studies and your conduct so far, my boy, but certain stories about you are making the rounds. They tell me that you can read other people's thoughts, that you can guess how much money a man has in his pocket, that you can make people see white when it's black, that you know what's happening at a distance, and so on. That makes people talk about you. Some even suspect that you dabble in sorcery, and that therefore there's something diabolic in it. Tell me now, who taught you these arts? Where did you learn all of them? Tell me in all confidence. I assure you that I shall not make use of this knowledge except for your own good." Without batting an eyelash, John requested 5 minutes before answering and asked the dean for the exact time. Automatically, the priest put his hand in his waist pocket to look at his watch, but it wasn't there. "If you can't find your watch, then please let me have 5 soldi, John suggested. The priest rummaged through his pockets, but couldn't find his purse. "Oh, you rascal," he cried indignantly. "Are you working for the devil, or is he working for you? You've conjured away my watch and my purse, and I can no longer keep silent. I shall have to report you. You're lucky I'm not giving you a sound thrashing." During this outburst, John remained calm and unruffled. The canon calmed down a little and said, "Well, let's talk it over quietly. Tell me how you did it. How could you so neatly relieve me of my watch and my purse? Where did you put them?" "It's like this," John answered. "When I arrived, you were giving alms to a beggar. Then you went in and put your purse on top of the kneeler in the other room. When we came into this room, you put your watch on the table. I hid both these things. You thought you had them on your person, whereas they were really under this lampshade." So saying, he raised the lampshade under which lay both objects supposedly spirited away by the devil. The canon had a good laugh and asked John to do a few more tricks. When he caught on to them, he was delighted and gave John a little gift and dismissed him. "Go and tell all your friends that ignorantia est magistra admirationis. Wonderment is the result of ignorance." Thank you all so much for watching, and if you'd like to hear more stories about St. John Bosco's youth, just click on the playlist above me here. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.